there are a zillion type of restaurants that lose money. Statistically, the most profitable ones are ghost kitchens, coffee shops, and casual dining. But after 21 years in the game, with 12 restaurants built from absolute scratch, including fine dining, pizzerias, gelato shops, and everything in between, I've learned which are the 3 actual most profitable restaurants, and they're not what you think. So let's break this down so you not only understand what works, but also how to use it, even if you're running a completely different style of restaurant. I'm gonna start with the most cash profitable restaurant, and then finish with the most percentage profitable in the industry right now. And the most profitable, pure cash wise, is fine dining. Now, fine dining is not about speed. It's about detail, atmosphere, and of course, experience. Everything has to be tended to, from the lighting to the music, and of course the food has to be exceptional along with the service. And if you do it right, the margins are incredible. Now, the typical net profit margins are low in the 3 to 8% range, but you're getting 3 to 8% of a significantly larger pie. But with that said, I've seen it drop to nothing quick if the operation isn't crazy tight. Now, I own a fine dining restaurant myself, Prossimo Ristorante. You can look it up. It is legit. It's award-winning. But I've seen both sides of all this because the prestige of while it's working is incredible. On the flip side, it is utter chaos and drudgery when it's not. With a fine dining restaurant, it is highly profitable, i.e. more profit because it's high ticket. And high ticket menu pricing means larger gross margins. Fine dining has alcohol with big ass margins, aligned with the wine markups, which are just incredible because you bought a bottle of wine, let's say for 40 bucks, that you can now sell for over 100. That's incredible. Like, you just bought this and then you sold that like a regular ass business where you didn't have to like build it and hopefully it didn't die on your shelf and hopefully 30 other things didn't go wrong and hopefully someone didn't have a harsh opinion about it because it's just product resold. That's the beauty of fine dining, is you get to have that as a massive buffer to your margin. It costs you nothing to make bottled alcohol, but you still get the brand equity with this type of restaurant. You get to have the awards, the press, the big recognition going on. It also works as your flagship entity. It builds credibility in the community, but it is significantly less likely to scale, and that's okay. So what are the risks of fine dining before everyone's like, okay, screw this, let's go build a fine dining restaurant? Well, it's very hard to just jump into the game of fine dining. You have to have your restaurant acumen tight, and I don't mean just you know how to cook. That's a given. You got to have a super tight workforce, lots of training, lots of awareness of server sequence, beautiful interior design, and acumen across the board. And even if you have all that figured out, the labor cost is intense, not just for front of house, but certainly for back of house to get that level of acumen working consistently on your line. You're also managing potentially a much more expensive inventory. Additionally, there is zero wiggle room for sucking. You can't charge someone $300+ a meal and have it be, that's pretty good. Pretty good is going to come off as god awful because they spent that much money for pretty good. You gotta be, oh my God, at that level. 1 weak link can break the experience. And at this level, the experience is everything. And now the experience under-delivered on the promise, and now you're in the failure zone because you can't have off days in the fine dining space. By the way, if you are interested of how you're going to reduce your cost for those expensive ingredients and actually make it work, subscribe because we'll have a video focused purely on that and vendor negotiations. So what can every restaurant take from the lessons of fine dining? Obsession over guest experience. Also focus on storytelling. People pay more when they understand the why behind the food and the experience and the ambiance and the way everything looks. When they feel that why, they are so much more compelled to pay more and to revisit. Along with that, fine dining restaurants are notorious for building exclusivity with limited seating and making it feel like, oh my God, I got into this place. You don't need to have a white tablecloth to act and to believe and to live the values of fine dining. Bring that level of intention to whatever your concept is, and you will factually get more revenue. Well, the second most profitable restaurant that I'm seeing in the space right now is still food trucks. For us and tons of other food truck vendors across America, it is a solid operational setup. When they are dialed in, they crush. Typical profit margin is 7 to 15%, but I've seen it go all the way to 25%. Why? Lower startup and operational costs, that's obvious, right? It means you can just have it and pay it off quite quickly, and now you're in the pure profit area. Also, less staff and less rent, or hey, no rent. It all boils down to this. You're not paying for toilet paper. And when you're not paying for toilet paper, you're not paying for toilets, and you're not paying for plumbing, and you're not paying for the lights in the bathroom. You're not paying for everything else that is something besides food. You're just paying for the truck, the food, the staff. That's it. Also, you get to be nimble. You get to move where people are. The festivals, the big events, wherever the scene is, you get to go to that scene. Along with that, you get to just do stuff. You could test a menu item and just, there it is. There's a new menu item. Not a whole new printed campaign, not a whole bunch of rigmarole that you have to go through. You could just do it. There is no barrier to quick movement with a food truck. But it is not all upside. Let's be super clear. Trucks are still very arduous. It's raining outside, bye-bye revenue. It might not even be worth going out that day. You really want to be at that one place? Well, you might need a permit, or there might be a restaurant nearby that's preventing you from being there because you're within so many feet, or you got to park it somewhere and there's no electricity, so you're running a generator and the generator is loud and now you're paying for that. The truck can only do so much also. And once it reaches its apex, it's capped. The best trucks are profitable when they are lean and when they are super focused. But you have to be crazy efficient and super consistent for that to be true. So what can all restaurants learn and use from the food truck game? Well, for starters, you have to keep your menu focused. Less is more on a food truck, and all restaurants for that matter. Treat your physical space like it was a mobile food truck. And what do I mean by that? Bring your vibe that you have inside, outside of your restaurant. A food truck has to be obvious as to what it is from a distance. Is your restaurant have a vibe beyond your four walls? Additionally, don't overbuild. Great food trucks are not overbuilt trucks. They're simple ass kitchens, and they test, they adjust, they optimize to make it work in that tight space. A finite rule of all things kitchen: small kitchens are great kitchens. I've never seen a really, really massive kitchen work as good as a tight kitchen can to produce revenue. The greatest kitchens I've ever seen have been small kitchens doing incredible output with limited movement and focused operations. Now, if at this point you're saying, well, I need to start a food truck, hold that thought, because I guarantee if you're thinking, well, the problem is we're just not a food truck, that's not your problem. If that's what you're thinking, the problem is the concept. What's likely occurring is that you are wasting money, and you could tighten it up to act more like a food truck wherever you are to revert that, so that you aren't leaving money on the table because you're trying to do too many things at once. And if you think this is you, if you think any of that sounds like you, then book a free restaurant review call where we will help you pinpoint where you can improve to be leaner, meaner, and that much more prepared to kill it. And the link is in the description. Number 3. Now, this is what percentage-wise is the absolute best style of restaurant to have. And it's a confined location. A confined location will always win. For us, we're located in the Tulsa International Airport, and that is fantastic. It's also abnormal. Most airport locations is a brand giving a licensing right to the airport's restaurant company to then use that brand, and they just take a percentage of sales at the end of the year. We physically run our location in a confined location at the airport, and it is the best percentage profit restaurant that we have. Now, the typical percentage of these types of locations starts at 10 and could go up to 30 or 40%. Truly, it's insane what can occur when you have a confined location. When you're in a stadium, an event space, or wherever people are there, they're just there, and they're not able to leave easily, you have the potential to kill it quite easily with a solid profit margin, even if you have to pay a percentage back to that establishment. Look at what Disneyland and every theme park does. They own those locations, and it's a massive profit generator because not only are they getting the entrance ticket, they're also getting all the food. Now, if you could then just take part of this and be the food purveyor inside some confined location, huzzah. Because once people are inside of something, they are not nearly as price sensitive. They're in a hurry, they're in buying mode, they need to eat, whether or not they're hungry. The beautiful thing of an airport is they might just be bored and they're still gonna spend money on stuff. And that's why they work, because you have built-in traffic. And you also don't have to market in places like this. Your existence is the marketing. Additionally, you could have long operating hours because people might be at this confined location for a long time, or it might be very tight if it's an event. But in that time, you could get in and get out and get revenue. And it's not like you have rushes, you just have consistent consistency. And depending on where you fit in the landscape of other things at that location, you could be the high-end choice. Now, here's the rub. These usually do have pretty high startup costs, and if the startup cost isn't that high, well, you are going to be dealing with a lot of paperwork, a lot of negotiations, a lot of potential bureaucracy to get into one of these types of things, and you're going to have your legal game on point. You're going to have a lot of lease negotiations because more likely than not, you don't own this spot. There's going to be logistical challenges of getting deliveries, the security, and all vendor access. And if you are not a big brand or chain or franchise, well, it's going to be tough to get into one of these. But if you can figure it out and have the ingenuity to keep pushing when you see an opportunity and then get your foot in the door, the revenue per square foot could be phenomenal. Now, whether or not you are in or have the ability to be in a confined location, here's what you can learn from that. Choose locations that have built-in demand. Office parks, colleges, gyms, or at least a solid base of people who are conveniently close to this restaurant, and then extend your hours to when the demand will be. If you're near a place that's always running 5Ks and they do those in the mornings on Saturday, be open mornings on Saturdays. For us, we know that travelers want grab-and-go items, and so do many of your customers as well. So what do you have that's available to swoop in and get out if you have that closed demo? And before you move on to any next style of restaurant concept, you need to know this. The type of restaurant is not the most important thing to be profitable. Any concept can be super profitable when you follow the correct strategies. I actually published a video on the best strategies to quickly increase your profit margins, and I recommend watching it after this one. Hey, and that one's linked in the description. In closing, if I had to do it all over today, I would want to start with one of these three. And the easiest entrance is food truck, but if I had a confined location, I would be all about it. And if I had the chops day one to do fine dining, I'd be like, let's just focus all our attention on that because we get the most revenue and therefore the most profit. Assuming I could do any of these without 1,000 mistakes, but I probably would have had those 1,000 mistakes because I've learned from experience how not to screw up. And that's the biggest thing, is I've learned the most important lesson is that great restauranting comes from strategy and knowledge. And that's why I created the Unsliced Restaurant System, to give independent owners the exact tools that we have so they can kill it day one and not just survive, but actually thrive in this thing. Because our communities are rooting for us. And the culture of the community, well, it depends on independent restaurants. And through Unsliced, I've been able to help hundreds of other restaurants. That's not hyperbole, it's hundreds at this point. From fine dining to food trucks to pizza to international, across the world, every single type of food, everything in between, all of them. And you can watch their stories here. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next one.